Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Thursday, Dr. Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fine, fine.
Good.
Want to talk a little bit today about our friend.
Yeah.
At least we believe he's our friend. But he's in, it seems like Tucker Carlson, we're going to talk about, got into a little conflict or something, and yet there was a controversy, and the ducks are lining up. There's some that defended him, and some not. Have, of course, to do something with the military and who serves in the military. So that was hot and heavy, and I don't think it's going to go away completely, because I think it invites a discussion and invites a better understanding of who's in charge of the people in the military and what kind of qualifications they have. So I thought it was very interesting. I'm sure you have kept up on this issue.
It raises so many questions. It's about the military. It's about the military's relationship to U.S. civilians. It's about the media. But I'm going to go just do a quick run through the controversy. I know everyone probably knows it, but let's just look at the first clip. This is how it started. Pregnant airmen needed to test out U.S. Air Force maternity flight suits. And then the next picture is a picture that Tucker used on his show of a obviously very pregnant woman with a mask on, apparently in the brand new U.S. Air Force flight suits for pregnant women. Tucker last Wednesday did a segment on his show where he said, "So, we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars. It's a mockery of the U.S. military." Admittedly, a strong statement. Let's just keep going through a couple clips, and then I'm going to turn it back, Dr. Paul. But let's go, and this is him talking about it. Tucker Carlson called sexist for saying that pregnant women shouldn't fight wars. Let's go to the next one. Here's some of the backlash. We'll do a little bit more of that later. This is an official U.S. Pentagon Twitter account, the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force Information Group, responding to Tucker Carlson saying, "This is what it looks like in today's armed forces. Get right before you get left, boomer." And it's a woman carrying another soldier on her back. Extraordinary backlash against a television talk show. This is an official military account. And we'll look at some of the other backlash, but I really wanted to ask you first, because this is actually right down your alley. And the issue is readiness. The issue are things that you, as a flight surgeon, not that long ago, experienced. So has this sort of thing come around when you were there?
Not directly as this. I mean, we were in a different era,
yeah.
But it's something I've watched carefully. And there was always discussion about women's roles in the military. They've been there a long time. I was always marveled, because I was learning how to fly in the 60s, and I was a flight surgeon. And I marveled at the fact that how many women were in the Air Force. I guess then it might have been the Army, but they were pilots, and they flew. They were taking the planes to Europe. Uh-huh. They made them here and took them there. So I really thought that's a pretty big deal. But it wasn't in combat, and that's what this is about: whether women should be in combat. Also, one of my favorite people has been, just because of what she did with aviation, was Amelia Earhart. Yeah. And I always thought it was such a tragedy, because she was a real leader in aviation. And so I've had a lot of interest there. And of course, there weren't women pilots that I took care of. I mean, I took care of a lot, because I was in for a total of 5 years with some reserve duty, and but I never had a woman patient in the Air Force. So a lot of people ask me this question about that. But, I think they're missing the whole issue, because it seems like women and people who are defending, this culture we have today, they're defending it to show that women are men, and women are tough, and they're not wimps, and they'll defend their country. And I got to thinking, under certain circumstances, I think I'd like to have as an ally and a partner in defending one's home, and children. But this is a different situation. People keep saying, "Oh, well, I'm a hero." People come up and say, "Oh, I'm a hero because I served in the military." Well, how do you serve in the military? And they say, "Yes, because you went overseas and you defended the Constitution and you defended our country and this sort of thing, and our freedoms, all this." To me, that doesn't make any sense at all, because I spent that time in there. I didn't see combat, thank goodness, but I never thought I was defending anything. I saw some things there that I thought was a little bit messy, and then as time went on, I found out that I really wasn't. So I think one of the issues, to sort this out in an objective way, you would have to talk about foreign policy, because if you have a foreign policy of defending our country, everybody should defend the country. Yeah. I heard a statement, one said that, the Chinese or the Russians or somebody said, we would never, and they were saying it, and they said, we would never invade because we know there's a gun in every household. But I believe women would fight, and they would fight good. But today, I don't think that's what we should be doing. So maybe it's a service. If we have conflict, we'll quit bombing people. So that's part of it all. But back to the more medical thing about what's going on, and it seems like I'm disagreeing with some of the medical talk that they have now. But I think we disagree a little bit with the medical professions from Washington over the coronavirus. Yeah. But some of the medical things there, the picture of the Air Force officer, the lady that's pregnant. If I had a patient like that, let's say, let's get rid of out of the military, and so a patient comes to me and she's 6 months pregnant, and she wanted to fly, I would caution her. But military flying, I would not pass a test, to tell you the truth. If somebody that far along to be flying jets, because of the physical thing. When I was being trained as a flight surgeon, I had to go through the hyperbaric chamber. They take the oxygen levels down to zero, until you pass out. Wow. And then you have a partner there that puts your mask back on. And so you have to be prepared for that. So in a fighter jet, in flying high altitudes, that can happen. So that's a risk, and you have to know what to do about it. And also, we had to have a sensation of some positive G-forces. G-forces means that you're pushing all your blood into your legs, and this to me just isn't very physiologic for a fetus, and so I would say that that's not good to do it. So this idea that it's a civil rights thing, it just seems that's a different story, and they're using that for justification, and yet there certainly is room for women, and like I said, I think women are very capable of defending this country, and they're probably very capable of shooting a rifle and protecting their family and their kids, and that's where it should be. But I just don't think that's what we're doing overseas, and that's part of the thing that people don't talk about too much, and I assume that this is going to go on, but this is sort of cultural war stuff, that seems to me more what this issue is, which is unrelated, to the real issue of who should be serving. And if you look at the net thing, some people don't think there's a whole lot of positive things about what the radicalism we find in the cultural war, and their goals are a little bit different. Sometimes the goal of the cultural warriors is chaos. They like to see chaos, and they're disruptive. And look at what's happening in this country with all this activity going on, just getting people upset and in conflict with each other. So I think this is an unnecessary fight, and if they took my position, believe me, I think my personal belief is that we would be a safer country. We wouldn't be exposing ourselves, because we would change our foreign policy and say what we don't need are more jet pilots to deal with fights that we don't need to be in.
Yeah, that's the real issue. But obviously, a woman faces a risk. She can take a risk as she sees fit. But there is a question, as you suggested, of the baby, because the baby didn't sign up for the military or to be a flight pilot. So, but really, it seems to be a conflation of issues, because it's clear from what Tucker Carlson said afterward that this is an issue of military readiness, in which, as you sort of alluded to, with some of the dangers of a heavily pregnant woman in combat in a flight situation. But they're conflating military readiness, the issue of readiness, with social justice, which is a desired political outcome of certain people. And it's interesting to see the social justice types crawl out of the woodwork, even from the Pentagon, over this. And I just want to share a couple more clips on this, because it's astonishing. Here's the same official military Twitter account. Let's look at this next one if we can. Actually arguing with Americans who agree with Tucker. One person says, please focus on China and not Tucker Carlson. This official military account said, come back when you've served and been pregnant. And someone else says, I served, now focus on China. We'll focus on our competition together with men and women. And it's quite strong. And in fact, even the spokesman for the Pentagon chimed in and attacked Tucker Carlson, a mere talk show host. This is interesting. If we can play that clip, we can play the whole thing. Actually, it's the Twitter clip that we have. If you can cue that up and get that ready to play. Yeah, let's listen to this for a second.
What we absolutely won't do is take personnel advice from a talk show host or the Chinese military. Now, maybe those folks feel like they have something to prove. That's on them. The Secretary certainly shares the revulsion of so many others to what Mr. Carlson said in his opening statement.
So they were revolted by what he said. They didn't just disagree with him politically, they were revolted. And in fact, the Pentagon itself put out a statement. And here's that next clip that you sort of snuck up there a little bit. Press Secretary smites host that dissed diversity in the U.S. military. This is a Department of Defense publication. It's astonishing to see this, Dr. Paul. It's astonishing. But let's look at, here's something even more. This is a commanding sergeant major who tweeted when Tucker Carlson complained about being attacked even by the press secretary. This is a senior military official. The DOD didn't attack your show. We absolutely disagree with you. Trust me, you'd know if the DOD attacked you. It's a doctrinal term. That's, to me, sounded like an absolute threat.
I keep thinking they're missing the whole point, and this would not be a necessary debate if we change some of our procedures and our foreign policy. But I think it's here to stay. I think it represents what's going on in this country. I think it is going to be divisive, and I think there are some people in this country that see this emotionalism on both sides. I think that's exactly what they want. Yeah. The more I try to understand, cultural Marxism, you say, well, how could they do it? It doesn't make any sense. They're attacking their own. And you see families attacking their families. And of course, totalitarian societies end up almost teaching and encouraging people to spy and report their own family members. So when they want chaos, they want to have significant changes made. And that's what they need. So I see that as something. This is not frustrating to the people who really push this, but I think they're probably being disingenuous as to some at least have a motivation which is completely different than anybody would ever dream, because they're thinking that they're holier than thou by being arguing for equal rights, and this is a strange way to prove equal rights by first having a military where I was drafted to go in and fight wars that are unconstitutional, and then go into the Middle East and for years fight and kill a lot of people, and say that we're serving the interests of our government protecting our liberties and all. It just doesn't make any sense. I think there's such a big issue out there. And I would think that if this conflict exists, so even if you wrote the law that would be much improved on this and had some rules and regulations, it's not going to do much good because the cultural Marxists are very much in charge. These type of conflicts are going on in our universities and our schools now, and in the corporations that join this cultural revolution, Marxism stuff. So that is going to be there. That's the big problem, and this is just one item that's come up, and unfortunately there's some people cheering it on, and I hope that we can contribute to the discussion in a little bit, in a little bit a way to just try to explain why this is happening.
Yeah, I feel pretty objective and comfortable being objective because I'm not a member of any party. But, it seems to me at least as if the military is starting to be used, becoming a political arm of the Democratic Party here. In case, Exhibit A is the use of the National Guard as props in Washington, D.C. That's what they are, clearly. There's no threat in D.C. right now from Trump supporters. They're being used as props. But I want to go through a couple of more clips to just kind of finish out this story. If we can go to the next one with Tucker Carlson. This is Tucker responding to them saying that he's just attacking women. He says, if the Pentagon can show that pregnant pilots are the best, we will be the first to demand an entire Air Force of them. The U.S. military is not a vehicle for achieving equity, is what he said. And this plus the firestorm over an official military Twitter account attacking caused a couple of really quick ones. Here's them backing down. We are humans. That tweet was intended to support our women warfighters. We can do better and collectively take a knee, which is kind of a strange thing to say. Let's go to the next one. And then they got into another little dust up. And this is another weird comment, Dr. Paul. We've strayed away from our brand, is what this Marine Corps, Marine Expeditionary Force, we've stayed away from our brand. I don't really know what that means. But I do want to say one other thing, Dr. Paul, and that's if we can look at the next one. This is something that really, I think, backs up what I'm trying to say about changing the military into an instrument of social justice. Very early on, the Biden administration halts Navy operation, orders sailors to undergo chilling stand-down training. And this is it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Let's look at the next one, please. This is the Secretary of Defense advertising this, a 60-day service-wide stand-down to address extremism, which many people are saying this is actually a purge of the political enemies of the so-called woke generals in charge. And here's what Austin, the Secretary of Defense himself said. The job of the Department of Defense is to keep America safe from our enemies. But we can't do it if some of the enemies lie within our own ranks. Very chilling.
It really does raise questions of understanding and loyalties and a lot of other things, but it sort of suggests something similar to what's happened in our cities, because our cities have been just recently been burning. The more liberal the cities are, the more social conflicts and the more problems we have with people living on the streets and all. And then there's the slightest excuse, not a real good reason and not a justification, but to riot. And there's a lot of riot, and then they figure, well, who's doing it? Well, it's Trump supporters. They did it all. They go back and forth on this political thing. But the one thing there is they had the riots, and all of a sudden, well, who's supposed to settle this? Who's supposed to have order and bring about a little bit of peaceful resolution of this? Would be the police. But we found in those big cities, frequently the police were on the side of the people who were rioting.
Yeah.
And so when you come up with the military, when you see this conflict, but I imagine just like every place else in business now, no matter what they think, they're terrified about standing against the mob, and they can't say anything because they might lose their job. And so, if you took a different position of what some of the leaders that you quoted, who knows what might happen to them? And that's what they're worried about. Maybe that's what this stand down is all about. I think you even suggested that's what they're doing. They're sorting this out. But this conflict, they like the conflict. And unfortunately, there may be somebody in there philosophically. Yeah. Obviously, there are people in there philosophically that aren't libertarians. They'd be arguing for a non-interventionist foreign policy. And the truth is we did have a lot of supporters in the military that came to us, and when they laughed at me because they said you have no supporters from the military, and they challenged me on that, and we of course had more support than the other candidates at that time. So we shouldn't write them off as far as being people, but the difficulty is expressing themselves and the danger of it. So and that is why we have veterans groups now that come out and they will argue against some of this liberalism, and they'll come out and they'll have organizations, Veterans for Peace, and things that they couldn't say when they were in the military.
I don't want to get hyperbolic here, but it is interesting to note that when communists took over, and I'm not suggesting that's what's happening right now, but when communists took over in places like China and the Soviet Union, the first thing they did was radically purge the military. That was considered reactionary. Pro-Trumpist? No, just kidding. But reactionary forces, they massively purged the existing standing military and replaced it with political militias who are more interested in pursuing a political agenda rather than a military agenda. And you can almost see some of that happening right now with the so-called woke officers. But I have one more document I want to put up. And this is kind of interesting. This comes from the Pentagon itself. This is Rod Dreher wrote about this on the American Conservative magazine. But this is an official policy statement of the Secretary of Defense. And now I'm going to separate the issue of the LGBT from the Defense Department, because we're not getting into the rights of these people. But what this memorandum does, Dr. Paul, is it states that it's the official Defense Department policy to push other countries into adopting and adapting the same policies we have toward this sexual minority. And so that means that the military is not really engaged in defending this country from aggressors from outside. They're engaged in promoting social policies overseas, which, by the way, would include some of our allies, as Rod Dreher points out. For example, Hungary, whose constitution says, in their own country, that marriage is between a man and a woman. So obviously it's putting the Pentagon, for social justice reasons, pitting it against even a lot of our allies. And I just wonder the wisdom of that.
That's a good point, I'll tell you on that. I think we'll go ahead and move on. Do you have another? No. I don't know whether you have something on.
I just have a closing clip. So.
Oh, okay. But I want to talk about a
that's
former
right.
senator.
I forgot. I was so worked up. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we need to go after. But we're going to make half his story a good story.
Yes.
Because Kerry, believe it or not, he committed a hypocritical event. He loves the mass for you, but not for himself. So he gets caught on an airplane. It was an American airplane, a commuter flight or something, and they got a picture of him. He doesn't have his mask on.
Uh-oh.
And but you know what? That must mean things are safe. He's an insider,
Yes.
He has all the information. So it must not be too dangerous not to have your mask on for him or the other passengers. So this is very good news that, and today I checked on his health, and he's still in good health. He didn't catch anything, and nobody else got sick on the flight, but he said he didn't want to wear that. So, this came up, and somebody asked American Airlines, what are they going to do about it? And they say, we're looking into it. But the airlines are, I found that out when after 9/11, the airlines are sort of, they didn't want any responsibility. Of course, my answer was responsibility for safety on airlines are the airlines.
Yeah.
And they might do a better job. I suggested they have Brinks to get on the airline and take care of things. They do a pretty good job on protecting money.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, they are a sort of a puppet. And this is once again people saying, and this upsets people. So the negative part is the hypocrisy. So we are not bashful about that. We should point out hypocrisy. And I don't know if he's answered back, but what answer does he have?
Yeah. Well, he's former Secretary of State. He's now, I think, President Biden's special envoy for climate change or something. Here he is flying on a plane. Everyone's seen the picture, I think, by now. Flying on a plane, his mask is off, he's dozing off. And on the one hand, you're right, the hypocrisy of, hey, mask for thee, but not for me. That is a point. But I think some of the people reacting angrily are reacting in the wrong ways. Why doesn't he get punished? Why doesn't he get punished? Look what he's done, he's broken the rules. Whereas the reality, I think the silver lining, I get to do the happy part. The silver lining is that he should be able to do that. He's doing the right thing. Why should the rest of us have to follow these rules? Because the rules are obviously arbitrary. If not even him, and he's in some risk groups, he's not a spring chicken anymore. If he feels comfortable doing it, then obviously there's something else to it. So the question is, why isn't he punished? The question is, why are the rest of us being punished?
That's right. Maybe we, at the beginning of all this, we didn't know there'd be a lot of numbers, and maybe somebody has already done that, to have a wall of shame,
Yeah.
And put it down. Who has earned the interest to get their name on the wall of shame? I would suggest that we could put Kerry's name up on that, but there's some that are a lot worse than this too.
Gavin Newsom, yeah.
Yeah, the whole mess. But I think this is going to be around a while because this battle's going on for a long time, and it doesn't look like the coronavirus seems to be shrinking in danger, but they've warned us there are 5 new strains already available. So that's why my optimism quickly switches to pessimism when I think they moving ahead. But the people are moving ahead, and they're moving in the right direction, and that's why we should use this and saying, well, he knows what's best for him, so why can't it be best for us? He made his own choice because obviously nobody told him he had to. The only effort is he was indirectly told he should do it, but he didn't. So it's an idea that people should be able to make up their own opinion about this, and I think that there's still a lot of people doing this, but there's a lot of intimidation, and that's what discourages me. People get intimidated and they can't speak out. Sort of intimidation. We were talking about that in this military situation. They're intimidated and they can't really express themselves, and they may have stories to tell that we'll never hear about.
Yeah. Well, the people are moving on from this, and in fact, even the media is moving on from the coronavirus thing, but they're begrudgingly moving on. They're very upset. And what was happening yesterday, I was looking around on different places. A lot of people were talking about Florida versus California still, and it's intensified. And I'm going to do a couple of quick takes as my closing. Let's look at the next one. I love the way CNN put this on there, the way they phrased it. A year into the pandemic, Florida is booming, and Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is taking credit. Well, shouldn't he? Right? They're acting as if he's committing a crime. How dare he take credit for the fact that they're booming because he refused to lock them down. And the last little comment, Dr. Paul, because we have to fight the memory hole. We have to fight the memory hole. Remember this picture? Here's Fauci. 15 days to slow the spread. It's now been a year anniversary of the 15 days to slow the spread. Never forget this man. Never forget what he's holding. Never forget the propaganda he spewed for the past year. And unfortunately, President Trump listened to him, or we could probably be over with this by a long time ago.
Yeah, DeSantis is being challenged by the Democrats that he didn't really solve any problems. The Democrats solved the problem, and Biden solved the problem, something like that. And so that is who's getting the credit, and that's always an argument with the politicians. And I think it's always stretched because actually the president himself if they go in office and there's a stock market crash, the president didn't cause that, So presidents get blamed when they shouldn't be blamed, and they get credit when they shouldn't have. But I happen to think the credit for DeSantis is deserving. But there's another story to this, because what we live with is he's helped out and solved the problem of the recession and depression caused by the virus and the lockdown. And I say, once again, that it's more than that, because we're dealing with a correction that was predictable and that we're in the middle of, and they never talk about, and that is the mischief of the Federal Reserve System. First inflating, and now interest rates, even this morning, interest rates are popping up again. They don't understand it, and what's going on? Well, the markets have turned. Interest rates are going up, and that isn't. DeSantis can't solve that problem. He can help neutralize that silly stuff of locking down, but until we change an attitude about why printing more money can't solve this problem, since it caused most of the problem. But the Republicans are pretty good at spending money, inflating, monetizing the debt, spending it on military, and the whole mess. Unless that's looked at, we can have blips, and it's good that DeSantis did this, and the country could at least tide themselves over and maybe learn a lesson or two of making these corrections. But even the token evidence that we have now on how beneficial it is if you just either avoid it completely or eliminate the lockdown, that is so beneficial. But that's a thing that has to be studied. But then maybe someday they'll say, maybe those libertarian types and hard money people, maybe they have a point about the Federal Reserve. Maybe we should check them out and have an audit of the Federal Reserve, and then just get rid of them. So
I'm done, Dr. Moss.
Yeah, okay. I do want to thank our viewers for tuning in today to this program, and I do remain optimistic that good things will come. But I get very nervous about some of the hostilities and how successful the enemies have been. And I wouldn't have predicted, that they would be able to take this cultural revolution as they did in this last week or two, and make it a big news item, but that's part of the process. And the goal, which helps me to understand this whole mess, is the people who are promoting this social injustice theories. They have a goal, and they want to have chaos, and they've been pretty successful. But we have to meet that up with a better idea. And I do believe that when they're presented with this, let's just hope we don't have to go as far as Venezuela or Germany and have a total chaos, because our civil liberties are dwindling, our economic conditions are still in serious problems, we're still following rules that make no sense. The Constitution really has been basically abandoned. So there's a lot of work to do, but I still believe it's so positive, and that if we can get the message out, I think that the job is not, getting those people to change as much as us getting to be better at presenting the case for liberty, because that is what we try our best to do, to present the case for liberty so that we can move toward an environment of peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.